Hello everyone. Before we continue, I just want to say apologies if I sound a bit off. I think I'm coming down with something and yeah, that's usually not good for my voice. Today's video is going to be a bit more laid back and relaxed, at least for me, because this is mainly just going to be me talking about a problem with the game and discussing it. Not a lot of skits or funny meme XD going on here, so if you're looking for something like that, this probably isn't going to be your video. And just to be down to earth and honest with you lot, the main reason that I'm making this video right now is just because I needed a bit of a break from more extensive projects. I was actually a tool when I was making the Wukong video, and I put it off for way too long. So that resulted in me having to crunch to get it out on time. I'm still proud of it, but yeah, it wasn't fun. So, to let my batteries recharge a bit longer, we're going to be doing something that doesn't require too much editing on my end. It's going to be pretty chill for the majority of this video with not a lot of major edits. So I do apologize for that, but I hope you guys understand. I'd rather not burn myself out and start hating to do this, so yeah. Now with that said, what is this problem that this game has that I'm talking about? Well, let me give you a few examples and then I'll get into what I call the problem and some various proposed fixes for the issue. So, picture yourself loading into an extermination mission. You're playing your favorite frame, Excalibur. You can't wait to just get in there and mow down hordes of enemies with your non-trademark beam sword because, well, that's what you do with a sword. But you end up just finding yourself kind of walking behind the Equinox that's destroying everything. Well, okay, so this time you go into a capture mission. You're ready to hunt down that sumbitch, and you're ready to shove your blade so far up his man cave, he'll be spitting out more colorful sparkles and glitter than Rob. Or at least you would, if an elite speedrunning Nova didn't just complete the mission before you even loaded in. These are just a few examples of the problem that we're going to be talking about today. And just to ease your minds, no, none of my suggestions are going to involve nerfing the frames, because the thing is, the frames aren't the big problem. Frames like Saren or Equinox or whatever else a top tier tryhard player would bring to a specific mission aren't the issue here. I'll get into what I believe the root of the issue is in a bit, but in situations like those examples I just listed, they can happen all the time, unless you like playing the top tier everything for every mission type, and even then, someone else in your squad might have the same idea, and you might find yourself having to fight them just to be able to play the mission. This results in a problem that I am calling the no-man army problem. Basically, situations where players in a squad don't feel like they're able to contribute anything outside of just being an extra gun. You don't feel like a unit in these situations, you feel like a tag-on. These situations happen all the time unless you play solo, and true, you could just say, well, why are you doing a capture mission in a party anyways? But I would reply with, why wouldn't I play with other people in a co-op game? Sure, playing solo does solve the problem somewhat, but it's more of a band-aid. The no-man army problem has been stuck in my head a lot recently, primarily due to other games that I've been playing. When I hop back into this game, a lot of the time when I jump into a mission, I have to make sure that it's a mission that I actually enjoy and I'm actually able to do, you know, actually play the game in. See, I actually do follow the advice of play solo for certain missions, but it's not because I want to, it's because I feel like I have to if I want to actually play. And again, this has nothing to do with frames being too good. So what's the actual issue here if frames aren't in need of being nerfed? Well, to answer that, I'm going to be comparing Warframe to two other games with co-op experiences that I've been playing recently, Dauntless and GTA Online. These three games are almost nothing alike. They all handle cooperative gameplay much differently. But even so, I do believe that Warframe could stand to learn a few things from them. So let's go ahead and start with GTA Online, since this is where we're going to be talking about one half of the problem, mission structure. In GTA Online, missions that require you to have more than one person often give you a damn good reason why you need those additional people. In heists, for example, each player of the 4-player squad all have a unique job that they will do that will contribute to the overall progress of the mission. And the mission usually ends with the entire squad together for the finale. Basically, each player is like a branch and the mission itself is a tree. They're not always together, but they all connect to a centralized goal eventually. Just as an example, one player might be tasked with stealing a helicopter and flying it somewhere, whereas another player might be tasked with distracting or eliminating enemies around said helicopter because the pilot can't do it themselves. Another player might be in a jet, whose job is to protect who's flying the helicopter, and so on. And the general overall goal is just to get the helicopter from location A to location B. This is a very simple idea, but the way the developers handled it is fantastic, because no player feels like they're just another gun or a tag-on. Each player is important. Now, one big problem that these missions have is that if a player dies and there's no more party revives, the entire mission fails. And that might sound awfully familiar to anyone who has played spy missions in Warframe, because a single player messing up a vault equals failure for everyone. So a lot of people might not want missions like what I'm discussing here, since just one stupid pup teammate could ruin everything. But, hear me out. Missions don't have to be designed to auto-fail if someone messes up, and they can still have the qualities that GTA Online missions have. There are ways that we can make Spy worth doing in a public setting without it being so picky that one player could ruin everything. For example, right, the fourth player could hang around a centralized terminal that will allow them to disable or delay the data destruction process without having to rush their ass over to the offending terminal. This gives them a clear focus. It keeps the mission going strong just in case one of the other teammates messes up. I do believe that Warframe could benefit from having missions where the mission takes effort from all players in order to complete, or at the very least, complete in a timely manner. Now, here's a very simple fix for capture missions if you're doing it with a full squad. Just add an extra target for each additional player in the squad. Give everyone a mark to their unique target, and make sure that they're spread out. There's very little issues with this. Nuke frames won't have enough range to just take out all the capture targets, and each player has a job to do. Everyone gets to play the game. The only problem with this is the question, well, why wouldn't I just do it solo? I could grab a single capture target and then leave faster than if I did it in a public group. Well, this question is partially solved in something like Avoid Fisher, for example, where playing with more people is beneficial in terms of relic drops. But in order to fix it across all other instances of gameplay, simple. Just give everyone a boost for each player in the group. Maybe an increase to whatever resources one got, maybe get them some focus. Rewards in general are the answer here. Players won't have to do public runs if they don't want to, but by giving players a bonus for playing in a group, the purpose will be there if they ever do decide they want to. Going back to Exterminate, that mission could also be changed in the squad, where each player is tasked with clearing a specific part of the map. Each player has their own objective marker on the map, and they all go off and do their own thing. Everyone gets their fair slice of glorious Grenier hunting, and you're not forced to run the top tier offensive frames just to get some action. Now, some might bring up an argument of, well, splitting up the team means certain frames become useless because their main purpose is to buff or aid other players, to which I reply, welcome to Warframe. That sort of problem has been around for ages. Missions have always had certain biases for certain frames. You wouldn't bring a Loki to an Exterminate, for example, because none of his kit revolves around the destruction of enemies. You wouldn't really bring a Nausea to something like Sanctuary Onslaught because of the same reason. You wouldn't bring a Trinity for Capture because there's no real benefit to her buffs in those kinds of missions. Certain frames will always fail to have a purpose in certain missions. Sometimes it's just not going to be necessary to bring a buffing frame. And in scenarios with what I've mentioned, sure, you wouldn't have much of a purpose there, but remember there are mission types where you could use frames like that. Trinity will still be amazing in Sanctuary Onslaught. Nausea will still be good at things like Interception thanks to its ability to stop point caps. Sure, they won't always be valuable in every mission, but that's the nature of the game. And mind you, I'm not suggesting that every mission should involve the group splitting up. Hell no, that would result in most buffing frames becoming useless everywhere. We just need a mix of missions where players stick together to achieve their goal, but also missions where players have their own objectives to do in order to complete the mission as a whole. In short, we need more missions that gives everyone more of a purpose when they're played in a group. And there needs to be incentive to play with groups on top of that. And this is where I feel Raids 2.0 needs to focus on the most. Situations where each player isn't just an extra gun, but a truly valued asset. Now let's take a look at the other half of the No Man Army problem: lack of player synergy opportunities. This is where Dauntless comes into play, and I've been playing quite a bit of it, and it is ridiculously fun. And a big reason for that is because of how teams have to synergize in order to best clear a hunt. This mainly comes down to weapon choices, because in Dauntless, the main gameplay loop is hunting behemoths, getting their hides, tails, horns, etc., and then using those to craft and upgrade armor. For example, you might need a behemoth's tail in order to craft or upgrade a leg piece of armor, but here's where things get tricky. Only certain weapons can break off certain parts of the behemoth, and you can only carry one weapon into battle. So what this means is that players have to outfit themselves accordingly if they want the best run possible. Yes, you could have an entire team of hammer users fighting a behemoth, but because hammers can't break off horns or tails, you're missing out on crucial loot. Now, some of you might be saying, well, hang on, that's way too much work. You can't expect pubs to plan out their loadouts with each other in Warframe. Oh, but I can! Because Dauntless's developers simplified it to the point that you can synchronize with your team even if they're just a bunch of mutes. How? Because prior to entering a mission, you get to see what everyone is using on the loadout screen. And if you see that, for example, there's 3 hammer users including yourself, you can switch to a sword or an axe to help round out the team a bit more. And sure, there might still be 2 hammer users, but here's the thing: having 2 isn't a bad thing, because each weapon has its own job and goal. Hammers are mainly used to stun behemoths more often, for example, and having 2 hammers just means more stuns, thus giving the other 2 party members more opportunities to do their own thing. This is a very simple way of working with your team without necessarily needing to communicate, which is a big hurdle that Warframe certainly has. Warframe's community is quite nice, however it's also quite quiet, and often you will get people who just won't listen to you for some reason or another. Hell, I'm guilty of this a lot of the time because I'm often switched over to my clan chat and I'm not able to read squad chat. I believe that Dauntless realized that this was going to be an issue too. The game can't function if it's too reliant on players constantly communicating in order to win, so they opted to keep things simple. Because squads are so small, just one player changing their loadout can alter a lot about how the hunt ends up going down. And I believe that Warframe could have the same deal. So here's 2 suggestions that I would like to propose. Firstly, give everyone the opportunity to change the loadout once per mission. Let them pick a different frame if they want to once they see what the rest of their teammates are running. Because let's be honest, if you're doing something like a defense mission and you and someone else are playing Frost, there's no reason to have 2 of you playing Frost. And a lot of the time, having 2 players play the same frame results in some problems. For an example, if there's 2 rhinos that built specifically for Rhino Roar, whoever has the weaker Rhino Roar has their buff completely overwritten. Not added onto the other rhinos, overwritten. As in, it has no effect, making the rhino more or less worthless. In cases like these, you'd really appreciate being able to switch to a different frame. This is also a major issue with frames like Saren as well, so being able to switch your loadout would be a godsend. A huge problem with Warframe is that you can't even get a grasp on what your team might be using before you're thrown into a mission. You click a mission with matchmaking set to public, and BAM! You're often thrown right into a loading screen before you can adjust your loadout to better work with your team. So, allowing people to change loadouts once per mission inside the mission would be an absolutely amazing feature that would help round out squads more and help with giving everyone more of a purpose. As for suggestion 2, implement more ability combos. Some veteran folk might remember D talking about how certain frames could combine their abilities for special effects. Max Magnetize in Excalibur's Radial Javelin is probably the most popular example. However, this concept has kind of fallen by the wayside, and I believe we need to bring this back. We need abilities that can boost other abilities if they come into contact with one another. Here's just one off the top of my head. Say you have an Oberon and an Ember. Say that the Oberon is laying down his hollowed ground. An Ember should be able to set the grass alight and create major damage across the area. And when I say major, I mean major. Like, DE has to be willing to not be scared and allowing these combinations to be extremely powerful. Why? Because if they're only just slightly stronger or just as strong as any other ability, there's going to be no reason for players to seek out these combinations. We need ability combos to be either extremely damaging or offer extremely high boosts to players. For another example, a Banshee should be able to boost the effect of Octavia's abilities by an extreme amount. And there's a lot that you can do with a system like this. A Hydroid firing his Tempest Barrage into Zephyr's Tornadoes could create water spouts that drown enemies extremely fast for a short period of time. A Nidus planting his Spore on top of Oberon's hollowed ground. It could spread the effects across hollowed ground, resulting in more maggots and more special effects. I could go on and on, but this video is already long enough as is. And speaking of which, I think I'll call the video here. To recap, the no-man army problem is a problem in which players are not given opportunities to feel like an actual team. Certain missions are structured to not mesh well with squads, there's a lack of flexibility in being able to alter squad compositions, duplicate frames are also often anti-synergetic. All of these issues together result in people feeling like just another gun without having a better purpose in the mission. Proposed solutions to the no-man army problem include the following. Reworking certain missions to allow more activity for everyone in a team, giving reasons to play in a group in the form of loot and boosts, allowing the chance for players to switch frames and loadouts once loaded into a mission, and implementing more cooperative ability combinations and powers. It has become extremely obvious how big of a disconnect is between players in a squad after I've played other co-op games. And there's actually more ways that we could go on about solving this issue. However, I feel that some would be a bit too intrusive for a game like Warframe. I originally thought, for example, that having enemies like Left 4 Dead Special Infected that could incapacitate a player and require someone else to save them would be a neat idea, but given how fast-moving Warframe is, I quickly withdrew that thought. And who knows, maybe you guys will have objections to these ideas as well and have me going back to the drawing board. Do let me know. And with all that said,
Insert ending here.